Hello, everyone. I thought it would be a good idea to do a check-in video for week 6 of the course. A lot of things going on. First of all, um, I send out a discussion review video every week, looking at a couple of remarks from the previous week's discussion board. Um, those are important to watch. There's no assignment that's attached to those videos, so there's no requirement that you watch them. But I think that it helps. You in this course, you're being evaluated on your grasp of material, and so of course reading the text is the most important thing. But watching the videos can help quite a bit, I think, especially with the more difficult material. And this is a video which I respond to student remarks, and the student remarks are clarifying, and I hope that my responses to the student remarks are clarifying. So just want to remind you that those are there. Those are being sent out every week for your use, right? And so you really, I think, ideally, you should use them, even though there's no assignment attached to them. I think that you want to make use of whatever resources are available to do well in the course, which means grasping the material in a deeper and deeper way. Also, you'll see here study question review videos. I try to release those, you know, in a timely way. And if I don't do it in an absolutely timely way, please let me know. But you have study question review videos for all of the readings so far. And I think that those especially should be watched because in the study questions, I ask questions which I think are vital to an understanding of the text, to the reading, and to responding to those essay prompts, but also to the final exam for the course. So I think watching those videos would be quite helpful. So keep in mind that they're in a folder in the module section of the course, and I release them, as we go through the readings. So the first 5 weeks of the course are now available in terms of the study question review videos. Things you may want to watch, I think, before you write your essays, but also for the final exam. The second essay is due this coming Sunday. Second essay on the section of the course, Jonas and Gray. There is a video attached to it as well. You should watch, where I talk about the essay prompts, which I won't do now because I do it in the video, but just to let you know. And I'll be responding to your first essay, hopefully soon, sometime this week, if you haven't gotten any grade on it or feedback. Try to get that done as early as I can this week. Otherwise, you're moving into the third part of the course, which I just would like to say a few words about. For the next month, we will be reading Plato's Phaedo and then Paul Landsberg's The Experience of Death, spending 2 weeks on each one of those readings. I don't know if I would say this is the most difficult part of the course, but in certain respects it is. These are longer readings. Phaedo and The Experience of Death are both more comprehensive readings, longer readings. They need to be done, I think, over 2 weeks to make them manageable, to give them, hopefully, their due as text, demanding aspects of them. So that's important. It really is, in a certain way, even though we're kind of going to get past the halfway point by the time we're done this. It's really the halfway point, the center, you might say, of the course. There's kind of what we do before we read Plato and Landsberg, and there's what we do after. And it's very important to sort of see why. Everything that we've done in the first 5 weeks of the course, a lot of varied material, especially the difference between the second and first parts of the course in terms of what's being talked about. But I think that you could say that everything we've done has been within a kind of an Epicurean space. That is, the presumption has been that Epicurus is right in the fundamental aspect of Epicureanism, that death is the absolute end of our existence. Now, whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing, whether our mortality is still something that we should worry about, those are all open questions for the authors that we've been reading in terms of their differences of opinion. However, I think that the basic presumption in terms of everything that we've read so far is that Epicurus is right insofar as he said that death is the absolute end of our existence. And what follows from that is the question. When we move into reading Plato and Landsberg, these are the first authors that really believe and argue that death is not the absolute end of our being, that death indeed is what Epicurus said it was not, or implied at least it was not, that it's a transition to a different state of being. Everything we've read so far has really been premised on the idea that, get that out of your mind, the idea that death is a transition. Death is a limit that we reach, and once we reach that limit, we no longer exist in any form. So death is not a transition to a new state of being. Death is a limit to any state of being, is the presumption so far. Reading Plato is the first author we've read who seriously considers the idea that death indeed is a transition, that there's some form of life, or being at least, after our physical lives are over, after death has occurred. So we will very seriously consider that from Plato, and that Plato's Phaedo is, in a certain sense, the absolutely essential text for a philosophy course, at least on death, because it's one of the classic statements in the history of philosophy. It is the dialogue in which Socrates tries to prove, in different ways, under the most dramatic circumstances of him about to be executed, him about to die, the argument that death is not the end, that there is something called the soul, or some aspect of the soul, which is actually deathless and immortal and eternal, and arguing for that. So it's a difficult and important text, and it deserves our respect. So I think reading it over 2 weeks is necessary. And then moving on to Paul Landsberg's very different argument. So I guess it's an argument for life after death, but he's a Christian, so he thinks very differently from Plato. And the kind of transition that he's promoting, that is the idea that death is not the end, is on very different grounds, I think, than Plato's. So you might say that in the most general sense, they're arguing for the same thing, that death is not the total end, the annihilation of one's existence, that there is something after death, beyond death. So they're on the same team, you might say, in that very general way, but it's quite important to see the differences between them. And it is, they have very different notions of not only what life after death would be, but why we should believe in it. And it's important to see those differences, and the only way you're going to be able to see those differences is by spending a lot of time with both texts. If you have a superficial view of Plato and a superficial view of Landsberg, you won't be able to describe in what ways they actually differ from each other and why that's important. So that's really the end goal state, is to spend as much time as possible with both texts so that you're in a position to actually have a nuanced view of what these two thinkers are trying to do, so that you can see in what respects they are trying to do the same thing and in what respects they actually differ. So it's a long process. There are a lot of videos to watch. There are longer readings. So you're going to have to give yourself, for the next month, maybe a little extra time to devote to these readings, and to have patience to read things which are longer, which is what we have to do in college.